So good morning, everybody. Until Louise gets on, I'm going to go through our guidelines, the land acknowledgement, all that, and then I'll have you all introduce yourselves. Eracism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through person-to-person communication to show that we are committed to treating all human beings with love, respect, empathy, compassion, and humility. Join us. Erace is an organization that does not espouse any political party, and we have no religious affiliation. We believe in acceptance of all people, and no personal attacks of any kind will be tolerated. We come with the intention to listen, learn, and not to argue. We begin today by acknowledging that what we know as the United States is the ancestral and unceded territory of many indigenous peoples, and that there are many more nations and tribes that could be named here. Members of our meeting group today are on the lands of the Chitimaca and Choctaw in New Orleans, the Creeks and Cherokees in Atlanta, the Tonkawan, Lipan Apache, and Comanche in Austin, the Lenape and Piscataway in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, the Wampanoag and Nicmac peoples in Boston, the Cahuilla and Mojave in Riverside, and the Lumbee in Fayetteville. We thank their ancestors for being stewards of these lands through the generations and through today. We need to protect and honor the history and people of these places. Despite centuries of colonial theft and violence, we should always remember that we are all still on indigenous land, and it will always be indigenous land. I think she texted me. Let's see what's happening. No. She is not going to be able to get on. I don't know why. Okay. So the guidelines, as you all know, are that we keep a list of people who've asked to get on the list to speak. To get on the list, you put up one finger, hold it up, move it around. I'll acknowledge quietly that I've seen it. If the person speaking says something that you do not understand, not that you disagree with, not that you want them to say more about, just a word or a term you didn't understand or honestly didn't hear, you say, could you explain what you meant by, I didn't catch, that kind of thing. Doesn't start with your opinion being stated, it's just clarify, it's not discuss. And did I say put two fingers up for that? We do expect everybody to treat everyone else with respect, no personal attacks, no name calling, and we also ask that you stay muted when you're not being the one called on to talk. Since this was Louise's and I only watched it once, I don't have a lot of intro and I won't have a lot of outro about it, but anybody want to start the list? Did anybody watch it? Okay, Stanton. Nancy. Anybody
Did you want to
else?
do introductions, Phyllis?
Yes, I do. Okay, go around. I'll call you on you to introduce yourselves. I always forget something. Leonetta, I've got you. Okay, so we're gonna do introductions first. I'll call you in the order I see you on the screen. Jean.
Yes, I'm Jean Walker. I live in Silver Spring, Maryland, just outside the District of Columbia for reference. And I always appreciate everybody's viewpoint on our issues. Look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Nancy.
Oh, hi. Good morning. I'm Nancy. I'm in New Orleans area. Been coming to Erace since June of 2007.
Thank you. Stanton.
Stanton in Austin, Texas. Been coming for over a year now.
Marva.
Good morning. I'm Marva. I've been coming to Erace post Katrina, and I look forward to every Saturday discussion.
Thank you. Teresa?
Good morning. I'm Teresa. I'm in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I've been coming since last August.
Marion?
Good morning again, everyone. I'm Marion here in New Orleans. Looking forward to having the discussion. It's good to see everyone this morning.
Thank you. Bill?
I'm Bill Ives. I live in New Orleans. Well, I have Cindy selling books for support the library at the art market. She does this once a month. She's not going to be in attendance today.
Thank you. Marla?
Hey, good morning. I'm Marla. I'm in the New Orleans area, and I've been coming to Erace since 2020-ish.
Thanks, Marla. Leonetta?
Good morning, everybody. I'm from New Orleans. I'm in New Orleans, and I have been a member of Erace since I was an intern during my undergrad.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So on the list so far, I have Stanton, Nancy, Bill, and Lynetta. Anybody else want to jump on before? Oh Lord, and I guess I have to keep time too. Give me a minute. So Stanton, you can start.
Yeah, the video to me was sort of very intuitive. It's just, you know, your politics can be easily determined by where you live and who you know and your circumstances of, you know, economics and education. And it wasn't really anything that was like, wow, I learned a lot from Nate on this. You know, generally speaking, people who live in urban areas are exposed to different types of cultures and different types of opinions, and you live in a scenario where you've got to give and take, and you don't have to be just in a monolithic type of environment. You have to adapt to, again, multiple opinions and multiple aspects of life. So I think naturally people living in urban areas are going to be more open-minded and exposed to other ideas and other people, and people who live in rural areas where everyone is pretty genius and thinks like you and acts like you're going to have a different kind of mindset. So I mean, it was interesting, I guess, but not necessarily revelatory in terms of the information. That was my case.
Thank you. Next is Nancy.
Stanton said everything I wanted to say. Yeah, it wasn't surprising at all. It was kind of like, duh. The one thing that I guess that I will say is they didn't really show this on the map, but if you look when you look at the voting, like when they flashed up on the screen and everything, like say like Louisiana is a red state with the exception of New Orleans. All right. New Orleans is this little island of blue. And the rest of the state is red, but you can find that to be true in other states as well. It's not just New Orleans. Like if you go to like I don't think New York is a blue state,
Jean.
but what makes it blue is New York.
Jean.
You know, the rest of the state probably votes Republic, but because New York is so large and dominates the rest of the state in terms of popular, it's deemed a blue state. I'll get back on the list. I'll probably think of something else, but yeah, fans stole all my thunder.
Okay, Bill, you're next.
Hey, I want to echo what Nancy said and also what Stanton said, but I lived in upstate New York, which was a very redneck part of the world. But New York City and Buffalo make it a blue state for statewide elections.
Marla.
Just like in Mississippi, every town has a black mayor, but the blacks can't win the statewide election because of the rules. Southerners, white Southerners. I add one thing. I think the polling underrepresents voters who use race as a deciding factor, because many whites don't want to admit to the racism. So the pollster asks, is race a factor in your votes? They will say no, even though it is. Only the most overt racists will say racism. But I've been reading about Ruby Bridges, and she was faced with the most overt racist as a little kid. I think I heard the time go off. So I'll
It
stop.
wasn't, it was Louise texting me, but you have 29 seconds. Want to get back on the
I
list?
will- I'll listen for a while.
Okay, thank you. Lynetta, you're next.
I just wanted to say the same thing that everybody else says, but also I do, racism does factor in the way I vote. I do not vote for Republicans, and if there's only Republicans in the category that I have to vote in, I don't vote in that category. I personally, I've always equated Republicans with racists, and I never vote for them. So that's just how I feel. And also, it's just been in recent years that black people have. Well, let me turn that around. I don't know if a black person will ever win a statewide post in Louisiana. I just don't see that happening. My time's up, right, Phyllis?
No, you have a minute left.
Okay, I just don't see that we've had black men to run in statewide elections and they never win because people in Louisiana do consider race when they vote. And I just don't see a black man winning a state election in Louisiana because it's such a red state. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Next is Jean.
Yes, well, I live in Maryland, and we have a black governor,
Teresa.
Wes Moore.
Teresa.
And yes, definitely, I voted for him. I tend to vote for people of color. We also have a lieutenant governor who's a Southeast Asian woman. And coming up, Cardin's no longer going to be the senator, our senator in the federal Congress. And I would push for and probably will make a contribution to also set, I can't pronounce her name offhand, a black woman who is the county executive in Prince George's County, but she's got a lot of experience. And the only thing that would interrupt that is if Jamie Raskin, who is in the House of Representatives, decided he would go for the senator position. And he's white, and he's been a really good representative person for us. So that's the only thing that would disrupt it. I would vote for him. I tend to go for the highly qualified black people running for office or for any position, because I know oftentimes how hard it is for them to have gotten to where they are. We're very blessed, and Wes Moore sends me emails all the time. Of course, he sends them to everybody, but it's fun to get them, and he keeps us apprised of what he's accomplished and what he's doing. And we're very lucky here, very blessed. So, and up county, the same thing here. Upstate is red, but predominantly the lower half of the state is blue. So that's how we got by. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Next, I have Stanton, then Marla, then Teresa.
So two little political cliches that I've heard over the years is one that Austin was called the blueberry in the bowl of tomato soup. And so that's how we refer to ourselves here, as the little blueberry in that big bowl of tomato soup. And then the other thing I always heard was, what do you call Pennsylvania between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia? Mississippi. So those are, just again, rural versus urban kind of little cliches. I was gonna say, and this is nothing that I'm necessarily proud of, but it is something that I do, I guess consciously. If I see somebody Jewish on the ballot, I'm gonna vote for them probably, because generally speaking, I think they're probably gonna be liberal and they're gonna be Democrat when it's a nonpartisan party. Or a nonpartisan office, rather, like sometimes some of the judgeships and those kinds of things. So that's my personal prejudice. I will also vote for a Hispanic name over a non-Hispanic name if I don't know who the people are. I think we all have these innate prejudices when it comes to voting, especially if you're not going to be familiar with, like 40 offices that are on a ballot in some election years. I will definitely vote for anyone who is other than a conservative white man, that's for sure. And then in Texas, they used to have what they call straight party voting when I first moved here almost 30 years ago. So you could just check one box that said all Democrat or all Republican, but they did away with that at some point in the last several years. And it used to be a little quick thing. You could go in, push that one little button, or, X that box and be done. But now you have to figure out on each election if it says R or D after the name. But yeah, I think, everyone has prejudices going into the voting booth, I think, either conscious or unconscious. But again, it just depends on, which side of the issue you're on and who you think is going to represent you more favorably. And the last thing I wanted to say is also, in states where you should be able to have statewide offices that are one party or another, I don't know how it works, even because redistricting has nothing to do with it when it's statewide, but somehow these rural voters, even though you look at counties like in Texas that have, 200 people in them, they go out and vote somehow. It's just shocking to me that you have major cities that are Democrat, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Austin, and we still have nothing but Republicans statewide in Texas. It's mind-numbing. El Paso, another major city, all Democrat cities, all with Democrat mayors, all with minority mayors in some instances. And yet we cannot get a Democrat elected to statewide office. So, and that again, unfortunately.
Stanton, sorry, you're over time. Do you want to get back on the list?
No, I'm fine. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Marla?
Yeah, I love topics like this because my first degree was in political science before nursing. So I find all this really fascinating. I agree that the video, there weren't any real surprising things, but I think we kind of need to be careful too on making urban and rural stereotypes clear, and populations and so forth they do shift. There are some dynamics that make things ebb and flow, and there's a possibility for change, and we've seen change in some rural areas as well that to me make things feel a little bit more hopeful. Specifically, I'm hopeful for Sean Wilson in Louisiana as a possible next governor for us. If we can get folks, especially in these like rural enclaves that the predominantly Black towns specifically, and those areas in Louisiana where maybe voting might be a little lower, if we can help canvass those areas and get people to turn out, I think it's very hopeful for him to possibly be governor. And then I was kind of chuckling the example of Arkansas versus New York, the example that the person in the TED Talk used. My daughter, goes to University of Arkansas, and they talked about sending kids from the University of Arkansas to New York and vice versa to have those varying experiences. I don't know when the TED Talk was made, but I think certainly University of Arkansas is still predominantly white, but it's much more diverse than it was at the time of the TED Talk, I think. And there are certainly ways to get a more diverse experience there than just the the stereotypical conservative, all white, although that does exist. I'm not denying that that's there. My daughter sees that loud and proud, for sure. And then I wanted to just finally point out, if I have time,
The
Kansas.
timer just went off. Do you want to get back on the
Oh,
list?
yeah, could I? Thank
Yes,
you.
absolutely. Okay, Teresa, and then Marla again. Anybody else? Stanton. Bill.
I found the video a little bit dated because he was talking about the Obama years, and I feel that Trump really, if you want to talk about flip the table, I think he just torched it on fire. So all the things that we thought were true before during Obama, it was just like, wow. I mean, I remembered all the BS about, well, America is now post-racial because we have a black president. Well, during both presidencies, I was really active in open mics. And when Trump became president, I said, can we now all admit that if racism was gone during Obama, it's come screaming back during Trump, or whatever, little stupid analogy. It never left. It was just, whatever. So I would have preferred a more recent TED talk about race versus voting. But just to talk about current times, I just think it's so entertaining that I recently saw a clip because Tim Scott, who is a black senator in South Carolina, launched his, hat into the ring. And so at his rally, they were talking to a voter who happened to be a white woman. He's like, do you think he has a chance of winning? And, it just pained her to say, well, he's so optimistic, basically that she doesn't think that he's going to win, but she likes how he is positive, and that was the reason that she was at the rally. And but she wasn't so enamored with this candidate that she thought he had a chance to win. And I'm thinking, why are you at the rally then? If you I don't know, people, maybe that was the thing to do that for that particular evening, who knows. But he and Nikki Haley, who are trying to run a really positive thing, and I just thought, y'all don't realize you're playing in a post-Trump candidacy. So I always find it really, really entertaining to watch the Republicans, because the Democrats are the grown-ups in the room. You really got to watch the Republicans to see what appeals to the masses. And you think it's like political limbo. How low can you go? They haven't found a bottom. They really have. They don't, their bottom's not even the law. Oh, and I used to say during the Trump era, Republicans look at each other and think, is it a crime to commit a crime? That's a real question for them.
Teresa,
I can't hear a timer. Is that up?
It did go off. Do you want to get back on the list?
No, I was
Okay.
just ranting until I thought 2 minutes was up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Marla, you're next.
I'll continue with a 2-minute rant as well. I may not take the full 2 minutes, but what I was going to say about Kansas, not relevant maybe so much as far as race, but as far as a red state versus a blue state, seeing Kansans vote to uphold abortion rights, I think was very shocking, and surprising. I mean, being a native Kansan, I was stunned by that, proudly stunned, actually. And I hope to continue to see more of the same. The other thing that I wanted to say, oh, darn. Well, I'm hopeful for Sean Wilson. I am also, recognizing the fact that money rules in elections, and Jeff Landry has the money and the power. So terrifying, but anyway, remain hopeful. That's it. Not even 2 minutes.
Not even 1 minute. Thank you. Next is Stanton, and then Bill.
Yes, there's one thing that always scares me when I hear them talk about it on the news as far as elections and potential outcomes, and those are the words suburban white women. That always makes me very, very, very nervous that we're relying on suburban white women to come out and vote for the Democrats, because fortunately, and I don't mean this in a offhanded way, abortion rights have become an issue again. So white women in the suburbs are now roused to want to do something to protect their reproductive rights. And I don't blame them for that. That's absolutely understandable. But if it wasn't for that issue, then I kind of think, well, where would they be if it wasn't for the abortion question now? And so, yeah, do I think the Republicans shot themselves in the foot with what they did? Yes, absolutely. It's, you know, the cliche of the dog finally catching the car. But the other thing I wanted to bring up is that there's also the other alarming trend of minorities, Hispanics, and Black men in particular, who are moving away from the Democratic Party and towards the Republican Party. And it's mostly on social issues. And it's the two bugaboos that one of our regular participants likes to talk about, which is abortion and gay rights. And, you know, and now trans has become the bugaboo. People who conservatively or socially are conservative, rather, and religiously are conservative. It's alarming. And, you know, we saw the trend in Texas with Latinos in South Texas who voted for Trump in larger numbers than they had the first time around in 2020. So that's something to me that's very, the social issues, you know, kind of dictate the voting trend of some groups of people. And that's why the Republicans are very adept at raising social issues as the main focus. The whole country can go to heck in a handbag economically, or, you know, we can do all kinds of other things that are not in our self-interest. But as long as you push, you know, anti-abortion and anti-gay rights, then you're going to get some votes. And that to me is the sad part.
Thanks, Dan. Do you want to get back on the list? Okay, next is Bill, then Marla.
A few short things. Texas, Stanton mentioned Texas. Texas is the only majority state in the country because of the large Latino population. So it's baffling why the Democrats don't win the elections statewide, because it's majority more because of the Latino vote, which is not in a block. Someone mentioned, when I vote for something like a board of directors of my college, I don't know the people, I always vote for the person of color, other things being equal. Just to influence, but more diverse representation on these boards.
Are you finished? Okay, because
I think he's muted.
John
Yeah.
Bell Edwards, he won because of the black vote. Edwards had 100,000 vote plurality coming out of New Orleans, and he hung on to win the whole state by 40,000. So he was a white man, but I think we'll get the same energy behind a black candidate for governor. We can win the governor's race too. And Edwards acknowledged the debt he owed to black voters for his election. At least he did publicly that. He tried to do things that promoted New Orleans, which is the rest of the state hates.
that's time. Should I put you back on the list? No?
No, not for now.
Okay. Marla, you are next, and then the list is open.
I didn't have much to say except echoing what Stanton said about the trend, of marginalized folks kind of becoming more conservative on, or coming out because of the issues that are important to them. And just wanted to say that, we all know here, no one's exempt from anti-Blackness. And it shows up all over the place. I think in conversations with people, sometimes they're like, well, that can't be the case because that person, like the person who ran the U-Haul truck into, or tried to break through the White House barricade, I think it was. Oh my gosh, he was Indian, but he had Nazi material in his truck. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, yeah, it does. Nobody is exempt from having anti-Black sentiment, period, or anti-Semitic sentiment. So that's it. That's all I wanted to add.
Okay, thank you. The list is open. Anybody? Marion and Nancy. So Marion, you can go first.
To answer the question, does racism affect how you vote? It most definitely does. When I think about the small amount of hellishness that I went through, I'm thinking back. I shared this with the group some years ago, and I'll bring it up again about how the registrar of voters at the New Orleans City Hall tore up my voter registration form in front of me every time I went. I went once a week for 4 weeks, and the fourth time was the charm. The woman came out of the back room when the man had the paper in his hand, getting ready to rip it up again. And she said, "No, don't do that. Let her go ahead and register." So I'm going to vote for dog catcher, trash pickup, whatever, because the audacity. It's a good thing I was young. In those days, you had to be 21 years old to vote. So when my kids were born and they reached 18, that was when the law had changed. I drove them to the registrar's office, I guess, and they vote. And now my older son and my daughter live in different, well, my son lives in Arizona, my daughter lives in Baton Rouge. I remind them when it's time to vote. Baton Rouge is terrible, as you all know, the capital of the state of Louisiana. Horrible, monstrous. It's like living in 1918. So I'll call my daughter when I hear something that's going on in Baton Rouge. I said, "Please go." And she said, "Mom, don't worry, I'm going." And it's a given with my older son. But when you think about the hellishness that Black people went through, lost their lives, houses bombed, beaten up, all kind of horrible, monstrous things to deter you from voting. If I have to have somebody push me in a wheelbarrow, I am going to vote, and I am going to pay attention to who's on the ballot. And if there's anybody I know that I hear isn't going to vote, and unfortunately, those of us in the race do know of a couple of folks that don't vote because
Marion,
it doesn't do any good.
Marion, you're over time. Do you want to get back on?
Overtime, that was quick. Woo! I was ranting too.
Are you good for now?
I'm good for now. I'll
Okay.
listen.
Okay, Nancy, you're next. And the list is open, Stanton.
I was listening to MSNBC yesterday about when I was coming home, and gosh, what was it about? I can't remember exactly what the topic was about, but what they were saying on there was about how Texas is very difficult to register people to vote, and very difficult that the laws that they put in place to make it not only hard to register, but also difficult to vote. That Harris County, which is Houston, tried to, they had ballot boxes, they took those away. They had 24-hour polling places, and they took those away. You don't have absentee ballot, do you? They took that away. They took away absentee ballot for any reason. There is no absentee ballot. And so those may be the things that they put in place, which has decreased most of the people that then they said specifically it is aimed at people of color and young voters. who typically tend to vote Democratic. And that may be why you may have what Stanton was saying about you can't get statewide elected Democrats because of those reasons, these things that Texas has put into place specifically to discourage people from voting who under, who have to have extended voting hours, who maybe don't have transportation, things like that to discourage them from voting. That's it.
Thank you. I have Stanton next. And the list
Yeah.
is open.
Just to clarify something that Nancy said, what we do have, you can vote by mail here under certain circumstances. Like if you're over 65, you can request a vote by mail ballot, which I have done. But then they changed the law that you have to re-ask for that every year, so that once you ask for it for 1 year, you have to then request it again the following year. It's not like I'm getting any younger. So once they knew I was 65, why is that changing? God knows, but it's to keep people from voting, obviously. And yeah, Nancy, I would also say that they've made it really difficult to vote in person because they've taken away a lot of the polling, whatever they call it, the polling places, the voting sites, and they're Houston was a good example of really reduced numbers of voting sites. People were standing in line for hours and hours and hours. So yeah, I voter suppression, and I think those are the words, is a real thing, and yet Texas is really good at it. And every year, every other year here, the legislature works hard at creating more voter suppression. The other thing I just wanted to quickly say was that when I grew up in California and I grew up in Los Angeles, and Tom Bradley was my mayor for many years. I don't know if any of you know that name, but he was like one of the first elected Black mayors of a major city back in the day. And then he ran for governor, I believe it was like 1984, I want to say. And he was doing really well in the polls, but then he lost majorly. And they called it the Tom Bradley effect, that once people actually went into the voting booth, they could not bring themselves to vote for a Black man. So he did not win the governorship back in the day. And I often wonder, and this is back to sensitivity issues and the stuff that gets a little uncomfortable, but if Barack Obama were not biracial, and if he was a very dark-skinned Black man, I wonder if he would have won the presidency. And I don't know if Black people ask themselves that question or not, but it's something I've always wondered. Why was it a biracial man that got elected? Why wasn't it just a very Black, dark-skinned man who was able to run and win the presidency? And to me, that still shows that we were never post-racial. Obama's election was a nice thing. I voted for him. I thought he was a great president. I like him a lot, but I didn't think it was the beginning of a post-racial society ever. So that's just something that I always think about. And it's like, yes, I do believe that white people have a little bit more acceptance of lighter skinned people of color. So
thanks, Stan. Do you want to get back on the list?
I keep saying no, and then I have something to say, but no.
Okay. Teresa and then Lynetta. Anybody else?
I did not realize how hard Texas did increasingly make it. Oh, this is a bad sentence. How increasingly difficult Texas made it to vote. Because I lived there for 14 years. I was like, and then I moved to North Carolina. And one of the first things I asked my parents was, can I just take a driver's license, to go and, vote? And they said, I doubt if anybody will ask you. I went there, no, didn't show any ID. And after 14 years of Texas, it was like, they're just going to let me vote without, all the hoops that I was so used to jumping through to vote in Texas. North Carolina did not give a damn. So, and at the polling places, of course, I'm living in Fayetteville, North Carolina, where there's a significantly larger population of Black people versus when I was voting in Austin. And it's just like night and day. absolutely night and day. It felt so much more welcoming and whatnot. And as far as well, one thing I was gonna say when you think, oh, I'm gonna vote for the black person, um, I still try to do my research because I don't want to vote in another Clarence Thomas. He is my reason why. I was just like, okay, I know you black, but are you Clarence Thomas black, or are you actually going to do something good? And I've long stopped voting. Oh, there's a woman. And it's like, nah, you could. Ooh, no. So I still do my homework. I don't do. I mean, that's just me personally. You know, if I have to do it blind, okay. But if I love the League of Women Voters, I try to access their website and like just let me read up a little bit on what you're saying. So those are my cautions, and it'll be interesting because Tim Scott is a very dark-skinned black man. I still don't think he has a snowball's chance in hell, regardless of, because he wants to be positive. That's his first thing. His party is not positive. However,
Sorry,
and I'm skipping
Teresa,
topics here, but
time was up. Do you want to get
yeah,
back on? Okay, great.
I'll just put my last comment in chat. So
Okay,
thank you.
okay. So I see you, Bill. I've got Lynetta, then Bill, and then Jean. Lynetta, you're next.
I think that all of that about we was when Obama was elected, we were post-racial. That all of that was just a bag of malarkey. I never fell for it. I never believed it. I don't know why people was talking about that. It was and I believe and I agree with Stanton. Colorism played a whole part of it in and why Obama was accepted. And it is just a matter of that just how America is. There, I think, I think, I think, well, I've seen newspapers ads back in the 50s that they were ads in the paper in the Times-Picayune that only light-skinned blacks could apply for certain jobs here in the city. That's just how things were. That's just how it is. And I also wanted to say that ask the question of the group, with all of this voting suppression that's going on in the United States, why isn't the UN looking into this? Because the United States go all over the world dipping into other people's elections. Why isn't why isn't the United Nations looking into what's going on in the United States? Just a question that I'm throwing out.
Thank you. Next is Bill, then Jean, then the list is open. Stanton, I knew you would come back.
I agree with what Teresa said. I don't automatically vote for a person of color because the likes of Clarence Thomas and Tim Scott. But I all else being equal, then I vote for the person of color. In North Carolina, I'm glad to see you could more easily vote in North Carolina. But to the subject of massive gerrymandering, the registration in North Carolina is about 50-50 Democrat congressional seats and 3 by Democrats because gerrymandering. So anyway, they figure out one way to get to if they can't get to another way. All right, that's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you. Jean, you're next.
Yeah, Teresa, I agree with you. I mean, I do all my research too. And thank you for bringing up the League of Women Voters, the Voters Guide. I hope every state has it because they send out the questions to the respective candidates. And when people don't answer, I also will research them on the internet anyway to see what I can find out. but it's a wonderful, unbiased guide in terms of who the candidates are for running. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Next is Stanton.
Yeah, I also want to interject one of my prior political thoughts. And yes, like Marla, I was also a political science graduate. So this is a particular interest to me talking about these things. When Al Gore ran and he picked Joe Lieberman as his running mate, I said to myself, this was not a smart thing that he picked a Jew, and particularly an observant one, because I'm sure that people were thinking, well, if anything ever happened to Al Gore as president, we're going to have a Jew for president. And I said to other people, I can't think America's ready for somebody named Hadassah lighting the national Christmas tree. I don't think America was ready for that, in my personal opinion, because I think that would have been a bridge too far for many, many people. And I do know that, you know, again, people of a specific group always have comments about their own in the group. And, you know, Jews do it amongst ourselves. I'm sure people of color do it amongst themselves. But I do know that my mother, who, again, as I mentioned, Holocaust surviving person, when Bernie Sanders was running, she kept saying things like, why is he so stupid? Why does this Jew need to run for office? Why is he going to cause problems for us? Why does he even want to be president? Because he's going to make things worse for us. If he does anything wrong, they're going to blame it on the Jews again. So, you know, I'm sure, you know, people feel that way amongst themselves in a group sometimes, like, just leave me alone and don't. In the Jewish community who feel that anti-Semitism is also a significant factor in American politics, and that I don't think we will see a Jewish president any day soon, in my opinion.
That was perfect timing. So the list is open. Does anybody else want to get on? Marba, yay. We're not, this official, we're not having a 2-minute wrap up today. Okay, Marvin, go ahead. You gotta unmute.
Post Katrina, I had the experience of living in the northern Louisiana for 18 months. They shipped our patient with to Pineville. It was across the Rape River from Alexandria. No majority of the staff was Blacks. The supervisor position was nothing but white people. The majority of the staff was Black. When I addressed the house supervisor on the problem, the nurses station, and you could hear a pin drop when the conversation ended and the supervisor went to her office. I was approached by the Black staff members, the housekeeping and nursing staff. You don't talk to the whites around here. You don't have outspoken suggestion. Once disrespectful, I had a problem with staffing. And I the approach to me, it sort of it off with you must be from New Orleans. We don't talk to white people that way. I said, which way? I was not being disrespectful. And you don't look at the face to face. You don't enter their personal space. I don't understand that, and I continue to handle myself in the manner I would address a supervisor in New Orleans. And I was shocked. That's why in New Orleans, in this great difference in northern Louisiana and Anna.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for letting me share that experience.
Thank you so much. Anybody else want to get on the list? It's 11:11. I guess we could start the wrap up. So everybody will get 1 minute, just never happened in months and months. So I will call you in the order that I see you on the screen, and you will have 1 minute to give us your final thoughts. Jean.
I just want to thank everybody for their opinions, and I just encourage everybody to encourage all their friends to be sure and come out and vote whenever there is an issue or candidates to be voted for. And if you've got League of Women Voters voting guide in your state, please use it. It's unbiased. Thank you. And everybody have a happy and safe weekend.
Thank you, Jean. Nancy?
Oh, great article. That was an article, video, or whatever. Yeah, and enjoyed it. Have a nice weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Stanton?
Yeah, thanks for indulging me this Saturday with so much verbiage. I appreciate it. Again, I enjoyed the conversation, and thank you, everybody. Have a good and safe weekend.
Thank you. Marva, you want to say anything else to wrap up?
No,
Okay,
I meant to men.
thank you. Teresa.
You guys well know I love getting a couple of good rants in, so thank you for that indulgence. And I did enjoy our pre-talk about Tina Turner. So
Thank you. Marion?
I certainly appreciated everyone's comments. I do look forward to coming to the discussions every Saturday. So the next time we see Louise, we have to tell her thank you for choosing this topic, because 2024 is coming up soon. So we gotta get our ammunition together. I shouldn't say ammunition. Get our voting fingers together so we can hit the button on the machine or mail the ballot in. So safe weekend, blessed weekend, everybody.
Thank you. Bill?
Hey, sorry, Louise didn't hear a discussion.
Well, she can watch the video.
That's good. I have voted in every election since we became eligible. I feel it's my duty to honor those who sacrificed so much for their votes. for the right to vote. And I can understand people who don't vote, but I understand the cynicism. But for Cindy and I have both voted every election since we became eligible in our early 20s. Thanks, everybody, for the discussion.
Thank you, Bill. Marla?
Yeah, it was a cool conversation. I think political culture is just such an interesting topic. So thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Marla. And Lynetta?
I enjoyed this, and I promised everybody, I promised the next meeting I come on, I'm gonna fix myself up so y'all can see me. I didn't want to scare everybody this morning. And Marva, thank you for sharing that story with me. I've always thought that about North Louisiana. That explains a little why those police killed that young man in Monroe. That kind of explains that mentality of North Louisiana. Thank you so much for sharing that story.
Thank you, Lynetta. So I don't, because I didn't pick this video for us. I wanted to, though, respond to Teresa that when in California, where I lived before I moved to Louisiana, you didn't have to show an ID to vote. And then I moved here and had like the opposite situation you had, is like suddenly I had to show an ID, and people are reading my name out loud and spelling it. And it's just like, it felt very unprivate to me. I was like, oh my God. So, and somebody I know in Ohio is like, how do people vote if they don't have to show their IDs? I'm like, well, it works in the state of California. But I didn't know that about North Carolina. So that's very cool. So I too want to give my thanks to Louise for picking this. I'm sorry she had technical difficulty and couldn't be here, but I will purposefully send her the link to the video so she can make sure she watches it. I will stop the recording, but then I have announcement I need to ask some questions. Sorry.